At 6:34 in the morning, over the central Persian Gulf at 24,000 feet, an Iranian ground control intercept operator saw exactly what he had been waiting for. One aircraft, no formation, no visible escort, no wingman anywhere on the tactical display. A single contact drifting along a predictable track at 420 knots, slow enough to suggest routine patrol, heading steady, altitude constant. To every instrument in the Iranian air defense network, this looked like a lone American aircraft flying a corridor. It had no business flying alone. The contact was an EA-18G Growler assigned to Electronic Attack Squadron 135, operating, as far as Iran could determine, completely without cover in airspace Iran's commanders had decided to contest. The intercept controller studied the track for 6 seconds. Then he transmitted the scramble order. Four Iranian F-14 Phantom jets rolled from the alert ramp at Bandar Abbas Air Base. Afterburners lit. Canopies sealed. The pilots climbing into those cockpits believed they were initiating an ambush. They were flying into one. Iran's decision to scramble for fighters against a single American aircraft did not happen in isolation. It happened at the end of 3 weeks of escalating tension across the Persian Gulf region, weeks during which American carrier strike group operations had increased in tempo and proximity to Iranian territorial airspace. Iranian commanders had watched F divided by a -18s conduct operations within ranges they considered provocative. They had filed diplomatic protests that produced no response. They had shadowed American ships with fast attack craft that were themselves shadowed by American helicopters. The frustration had been building toward a moment. Tonight, the moment appeared to arrive on their radar scopes perfectly packaged. The F-14 Phantom is one of the most historically significant combat aircraft ever built. In American service during the Vietnam War era, it defined the concept of the multi-role supersonic fighter. Iran received 32 of them before 1979 and has operated them ever since through 4 decades of international sanctions, parts embargoes, and improvised maintenance regimes that would have grounded any other nation's air force years ago. Iranian technicians have sourced components through shadow procurement networks, reverse-engineered critical systems, and rebuilt airframes that Western engineers declared unserviceable. The result is a fleet of combat aircraft that can take off, navigate, and fire weapons, but whose avionics systems run on 1970s-era processing hardware that has never been meaningfully updated. The fire control radar in these jets locks targets using emission frequencies and processing algorithms that American electronic warfare systems cataloged decades ago. The missiles loaded on the Phantoms that morning had been maintained under sanctions-era conditions. Whether their guidance seekers would function reliably in a contested electromagnetic environment was a question the pilots had been trained not to dwell on. They were told what they needed to know. One target. Alone. Slow. Within range. The mathematics said the ambush would succeed. The mathematics were wrong before the jets cleared the runway. The EA-18G Growler is not what it appears to be from the outside. To any radar system, including the Phantom's AWG-10B fire control radar, it presents a profile nearly identical to an F divided by a -18F Super Hornet strike fighter. Same airframe dimensions, same radar cross-section, same infrared signature profile. The distinction between a Growler and a standard Super Hornet cannot be made from a radar return alone. That indistinguishability is not incidental. It was engineered into the design. What the EA-18G carries internally is a different matter entirely. Its /ELQ 218 wideband receiver system functions as a passive electromagnetic sensor capable of detecting, identifying, and precisely locating any radar emission within a vast frequency spectrum, including emissions from aircraft that believe they are operating in stealth. The system does not emit. It only listens. And it had been listening to the 4 Iranian Phantoms since they cleared the traffic pattern at Bandar Abbas Air Base. The Growler's crew, a pilot and an electronic countermeasures officer, logged the first Iranian radar emission at 6:11, 23 minutes before the scramble order was visible on any American display. The AWG-10B search radar from the lead Phantom had swept across the Growler's airspace during a routine search pattern. The /ELQ 218 recorded the emission, classified it against its electronic order of battle database, and handed the crew a precise identification of the threat aircraft type, its radar operating mode, and the exact frequency parameters of its fire control system. By the time the four Phantoms were climbing through 10,000 feet in tactical formation, the Growler's electronic countermeasures officer had already prepared for separate jamming solutions, one calibrated specifically for each aircraft's individual radar emission signature. Modern fire control radars produce minor variations in pulse timing and frequency drift that function as acoustic fingerprints. The ECM officer had 4 fingerprints and 4 loaded weapons configured to match each one. The Growler did not accelerate. It did not turn away. It did not transmit any signal that would indicate the crew was aware of the approaching formation. The Iranian formation leader observed the target maintaining its steady track and drew the logical tactical conclusion. The Americans had not detected the intercept. The geometry was developing exactly as briefed. He pushed the formation into a combat spread and began his final approach to weapons range, keeping his radar in search mode to avoid triggering any passive warning receivers the target might carry. He did not know that avoiding active radar emissions at this stage was irrelevant. His engines had already given him away. The EA-18G can detect infrared signatures through correlation with known aircraft performance data. It can track aircraft from their passive electromagnetic background, the electronic noise generated by avionics systems, encrypted data links, and IFF transponders operating in standby mode. The 4 Iranian Phantoms had been tracked continuously since takeoff without emitting a single active sensor return. At 6:38, for minutes before the formation reached the Growler's briefed engagement range, the electronic countermeasures officer completed his final pre-activation checklist. The EA-99 tactical jamming pods mounted on the Growler's wing hardpoints cycled to ready state. High-powered amplifiers charged. Antenna arrays oriented toward 4 individual bearing angles. He looked at his display. He had everything he needed. He waited. The Iranian formation leader activated his AWG-10B fire control radar in track mode at 6:41. The emission crossed 18 miles of open air at the speed of light and returned a clean, strong target reflection from the Growler's airframe. His weapons system confirmed target acquisition. Radar locked tone in his headset. Clean geometry. The shot parameters were within specifications. He began the weapons arming sequence. The arming sequence completed in 1.4 seconds. The jamming solution activated in 0.3 seconds. The EA-99 pod transmitted focused electromagnetic energy on the exact frequency, pulse pattern, and emission bandwidth of Iranian formation leader's fire control radar. Not broadband interference, not scattered noise. A precisely targeted, high-power transmission calculated to appear to the Iranian radar processor as a perfect echo return, but from a direction and at an intensity that overwhelmed the system's ability to distinguish the real target from the electromagnetic environment surrounding it. The locked tone in the Iranian pilot's headset ceased. He checked his radar display. The target contact was gone. Not degraded, simply absent, as though the aircraft he had been tracking for the past 6 minutes had ceased to exist mid-intercept. He switched to backup ranging mode. His radar processor returned an error indication it had never displayed during any training exercise or previous operational sortie. He cross-checked his navigation display. Navigation was drifting. His GPS receiver was receiving contradictory position data from multiple apparent satellite signals, a characteristic signature of GPS spoofing that his 1970s air avionics had no capability to detect or filter. His data link to ground control was degrading. The communications frequency his ground controller was transmitting on was now buried under electromagnetic interference, so dense that individual words were no longer distinguishable. Within 8 seconds of the jamming activation, the Iranian formation leader's Phantom had transitioned from a functional combat aircraft to a machine he was flying entirely on raw airspeed indicators, magnetic compass, and visual horizon reference. His radar was blind. His navigation system was unreliable. His weapons could not arm because the fire control computer that commands the arming sequence had lost its radar input and returned to safety lockout mode. The 3 wingmen experienced system failures in sequence, 11 seconds, 16 seconds, and 22 seconds after the formation leader's radar went dark. Each failure followed the same pattern. Each was caused by a jamming solution prepared specifically for that aircraft's individual electronic signature. For Iranian combat aircraft reduced to 4 manually flown fuselages over open water, the formation leader transmitted a status report to ground control. Ground control had no answer. Ground control's own radar tracking of engagement had been disrupted by a secondary jamming transmission from the Growler targeting Iranian ground-based air defense frequencies simultaneously. Iran's air defense network was not watching the engagement. It was watching static. At 6:43, the Growler turned, not away from the Iranian formation, toward it. The aircraft banked left, reduced power, and descended to the formation leader's altitude on a direct intercept heading. The Iranian pilot, flying his crippled jet on raw piloting skill without functioning sensors, did not immediately understand what the closing contact on his backup optical sight represented. When recognition came, it produced a response he had not experienced in any exercise or training scenario, the particular disorientation of a pilot who has just understood that the aircraft he was hunting has been hunting him. The Growler passed 600 feet below the formation leader's Phantom at 520 knots, its wing tanks and ELQ-99 pods clearly visible against the pale morning sky. It did not fire. It did not take any aggressive action. It simply flew through the formation's altitude band with the casual, unhurried precision of a crew operating inside a tactical environment they control completely. Then it climbed back to its original altitude, reset its heading, and resumed its original course, as though the previous 9 minutes had been a routine check of the weather ahead. 2F divided by a -18F Super Hornets that had been holding at 35,000 feet in a passive patrol pattern 40 miles north dropped their noses simultaneously and began their descent toward the Iranian formation at supersonic speed. The Phantoms had no warning, no radar return, no data link alert. The Super Hornets appeared at the formation's altitude without acoustic or electronic notice, one on each side of the damaged Iranian jets, speed matched precisely, wingtip separation approximately 200 feet. The Iranian pilots looked into their cockpits at blank displays and then looked out their canopies at the two aircraft that had just materialized beside them. Both Super Hornet pilots were visible, hands visible on the controls, heads turned to observe the Iranian jets without aggression, without weapon arming indication, without any action other than simply being present in formation with aircraft that had, 60 seconds earlier, been attempting to shoot down an American crew. The formation leader transmitted on his emergency frequency. The channel was clear. Ground control was still receiving interference on its primary and secondary communications bands. The formation leader's transmission went unanswered for 14 seconds. Then his radio produced a response, but not from Bandar Abbas. The USS Carl Vinson, operating 110 miles to the south, transmitted on the open guard frequency. A formal, clipped transmission in both English and Farsi. Not a threat, not a warning, a notification. The transmission stated that all 4 Iranian aircraft had been continuously tracked since takeoff, that their radar emissions and electronic signatures had been recorded in full, and that the aircraft were free to return to their base of origin. It ended there. No further message, no ultimatum, no demand. The silence after that transmission was its own message. The 4 Iranian Phantoms turned south toward the Iranian coast. The 2 Super Hornets held formation with them for 40 miles, not escorting, not threatening, simply present, before banking north and climbing back to altitude without ceremony. The Growler had already departed the area, its cruise mission recorder carrying 9 minutes of electromagnetic data that would be analyzed for weeks by intelligence teams at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. All 4 Iranian Phantoms landed at Bandar Abbas. All 4 pilots filed incident reports. The reports described system failures of a type and simultaneity that the aircraft's maintenance documentation had no category for. Iranian technical teams spent 3 days examining the avionics of each jet, looking for internal failures that would explain what the pilots described. They found nothing wrong with the hardware. Because nothing was wrong with the hardware. The aircraft had performed exactly as designed. The systems that failed had been externally targeted with precision the Iranian technical manuals had never anticipated. The debrief that followed inside Iranian Air Force Command produced conclusions that were never made public, but whose operational effects became visible within days. Scheduled patrol activity by Iranian fighter assets over the Persian Gulf dropped by more than 60% in the 2 weeks following the engagement. Training exercises involving radar-active intercept profiles were suspended. The modifications requested for the Phantom Fleet's electronic countermeasures package were submitted through procurement channels and quietly denied. Because the required technology falls under export restrictions, Iran has no pathway to circumvent. The numbers of this engagement require no interpretation. Iran committed 4 F-4E Phantom aircraft, each representing decades of sanctioned-era maintenance investment and irreplaceable trained crew time. Combined operational value of the sortie, estimated at $30 million in life cycle costs. Munitions expended, 0, because none could be fired. Mission objective achieved, 0. Electronic systems on all 4 aircraft temporarily or partially compromised, 4 out of 4. Combat capability during the engagement window, effectively 0 for all aircraft simultaneously. The United States committed 1 EA-18G Growler crew, 2F divided by -18F Super Hornet aircraft already on patrol, and the transmission time of a single VHF radio message. Munitions expended, 0. Combat aircraft lost, 0. Crew casualties, 0. Intelligence collected on Iranian radar operating parameters, fighter formation tactics, and ground control communication procedures, comprehensive. But the strategic accounting goes deeper than hardware. The EA-18G Growler exists to answer a specific question that every adversary air force must eventually confront. What does your air combat capability actually look like when the electromagnetic environment you depend on no longer functions as designed? Iranian pilots train extensively in their Phantoms. They understand the jet's performance envelope, its weapons employment procedures, its radar modes, and its tactical limitations. What they cannot train against, because they do not possess equipment capable of replicating it, is the effect of a dedicated electronic attack aircraft that has spent 40 minutes cataloging every radar emission their aircraft produce before the engagement begins. The ambush the Iranian formation believed it was executing had been reversed before the pilots were briefed. The target they selected was the most dangerous aircraft in the American inventory for exactly the scenario they chose to prosecute. An EA-18G Growler does not need to evade an intercept. It needs the intercept to reach weapons employment range so that its jamming solutions can be validated against live fire control emissions in a real operational environment. Iran's 4 Phantom pilots gave the Growler crew 9 minutes of live target data on Iranian radar systems. The Americans gave Iran nothing it did not already know, except the confirmation, delivered quietly over an open radio frequency, that they had been watched from the moment their wheels left the runway. Modern air combat is decided by the side that understands the electromagnetic environment better. Not the side with more aircraft, not the side with longer range missiles, and not the side flying in home waters with geographic familiarity. The side that sees every emission, classifies every system, and prepares every countermeasure before the opposing pilot has finished his pre-flight checklist. Iran flew 4 fighters into an engagement it believed it had designed. The Growler crew had designed it first. The difference between those 2 facts is the difference between an air force and an electromagnetic kill chain, and on the morning of 6/34, only one side understood what kind of engagement they were actually in. The USS Carl Vinson continued her scheduled operations. Flight ops resumed on schedule. The Growler recovered to the carrier's flight deck 40 minutes after the engagement ended. The crew completed their post-flight debrief, filed their mission report, and ate breakfast. In Tehran, 4 pilots sat across tables from commanders trying to understand what had happened to aircraft that returned without a scratch and without having fired a single weapon, but which could no longer be said with any honesty to have entered that airspace as hunters.